And we're back. Our first interview is with the playwright of Sacrificing Justice. Please welcome S. Renee Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, good to be here.
So, pretty deep, heavy play.
Yeah, it's kind of intense. Lots of symbolism in there, lots of issues that we don't really like to talk about, but that's the beauty of theater and art. We're able to bring these up in a way that we can have conversation.
So why these particular issues?
Well, you know, I'm a collector of phrases, of stories. I had heard some of these things going on out of conversations that came after the movie Precious came on. Huh? There was a group of women who got together afterward and started talking about some things, and things bubbled up, and it was really kind of heartbreaking to hear some of those real life stories that nobody really talks about. There aren't enough safe spaces to really share these things. And so I just took in this information and thought maybe I'd, at some point, write more about it. And so when Portland Center Stage was having its play Black Pearl, they had an opportunity to have a free writing class. And so I signed up, and what I didn't realize is that all of us were going to be expected to write a play. And so when we went through the process, all of that information that I collected over a year, maybe 2 years ago, kind of bubbled up, and it came out in the play through these writing classes. And I wanted to be able to talk about some of the generational secrets that are held, which I tried to symbolize within that ring, that Justice said it stops here in this generation, and gave that ring back so she wouldn't continue to carry on the secrets. But I love theater, and I love the opportunity to be able to explore really difficult issues. So it was a process that led to the creation of this today. So thank you for having it be a part of your production.
Yes, thank you for sharing it. So you held on to these notes you collected for almost 2 years before you actually...
Oh, I have lots and lots of notebooks and journals, and you know, I spent my life as a writer, so this was a practice I was really accustomed to. I would, you know, read novels, and they used a particular word that was interesting. I'd write it down and just kind of, you know, absorb it and meditate on it a little bit, and at some point that particular word would come back up in something I wrote about. But yeah, I think that we just need to be open to what we're inspired by, what becomes our muse. It could be anything.
What do you find gratifying about writing for the stage, for theater?
Well, some of the issues that I'm afraid to or reluctant to talk about, I can actually express through theater. I'm a survivor, for example, of domestic violence and sexual assault. And so I wrote plays about those issues because I wanted to work through that. I wanted to find out, you know, how I was going to deal with it, how I was going to process that. And so theater was an easy way to bring these issues out without feeling like it was so personal. I could let this pain be lived through the characters, and it was healing for me as well.
Now, it's interesting that you say that, because I think another person might say that theater is a very vulnerable place to present something as heavy as the issues you mentioned. So was there any sort of period where you had to overcome, you had to force yourself? Talk about that.
Oh, in theater, I always had to force myself because, you know, I act as well, and that is, you know, I used to be a really, really shy person, and I let people know that because it's so different from who I am now. Mm-hmm. But theater was the vehicle that allowed me to get past myself, past my shyness and those barriers that I put up in order to keep people away. And so I have a love for theater because it really helped me develop my personality. It helped me develop as a person. And so, yeah, it's always a very vulnerable thing to kind of put your words out there and have these amazing actresses be able to bring those words to life. It's always a risk. It's always some vulnerability. But that really is what makes it real. That's what makes theater so vibrant and so it's such a wonderful experience, is because you allow yourself to have that vulnerability and let the audience kind of interact, because you feel their energy, you feel their spirit. And so there's nothing else like it, where the audience really gets to participate in the creation of something that is then healing for the fuller community.
And so you, there's a point where you feel that you've connected with the audience through what you've written, through your characters?
I do, mostly because of the feedback that the audience gives me back about how this was an issue that really resonated with them. And I know when we talk about hard stuff that we sometimes as individuals believe that we're the only ones who have gone through this, we're the only ones who know what this is really like, when actually the opposite is true. There are so many other people who are dealing with some of the same situations. But again, we talk about it because there's shame involved in it, because there's guilt involved in it. And so we would rather just put that ring on and just keep going without really discussing and having those conversations. And so, you know, it just needs to happen. And if theater can be the way that we can have these conversations and mirror back these kinds of things, that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
I agree. And you talked about feedback. I don't know if we have questions from the audience, but I'm going to continue. And in case some questions appear, we will integrate them into the interview.
Love to.
So let's talk about, I'd like to ask about if you have a particular process, like how did you approach this play or other plays? Like you're looking at the blank page, where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I was fortunate, once again, because I participated in that writing workshop. I had no idea I was going to write this piece. I hadn't even thought about writing another play. Well, I thought about it, but I hadn't really done anything about it. Right. But to sit me in this room for a period of 4 weeks where there was an expectation that you're going to have to produce something, that is really what helped me create this piece. And I was open to the experience, and this happened. And as a result of writing Sacrificing Justice, I was in that kind of creative mode and ended up writing 3 more plays as a result of that. But I mean, that's part of, you know, what artists are about. When we start being creative and having this muse just really you know, just carry us, you know, it's hard to stop. And so I ended up writing several more plays that I, you know, am working on trying to get produced as well.
And how do, you had the workshop to motivate you because you had a deadline, you had people in expectation. Right. Were there stages where you had to produce a rough draft by this date and then,
yes.
What do you call it, a revision?
Right.
By a certain
yes,
date?
We definitely went through that process.
So when you're out of the workshop, where do you find the motivation to complete a script, especially if you hit a snag and you don't know where to go?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been a writer most of my life and spent 25 years as a journalist where I was always on deadline, and I am accustomed to writing. Writing is a gift, and it comes to me very easily. And so when I make a decision that I'm going to do something, I don't necessarily have a problem with writer's block. I just, you know, there are some people who paint, so are some people who do architecture, and that's their gift. And I just know that my gift is writing, and so with that gift, I really have a responsibility to be able to put it back out there for people to enjoy that. I can't keep it to myself. I have to give it away. And so once I've made that decision, I usually follow through with it. It's just a habit.
Oh, sure. But now I'm hearing when you say you were a journalist, I'm starting to think, well, a journalist collects information,
right.
bits of things,
right.
and journalists are accustomed to writing quickly, mm-hmm. like you say, under deadlines, and they often expose issues to the public.
Absolutely.
So
it's just a different form.
What were you a journalist with?
I was a columnist for the Oregonian.
Oh.
For about 7 years. I worked for the Oregonian a total of 10 years, but I was a columnist here in Portland. And so I was, as you said, very accustomed to talking about some really hard issues. And so when you're trained as a journalist, it's always easy to kind of translate that into other areas. And so I became this playwright, and I also did poetry and spoken word, and I've also written grants. And so, you know, just expanding the opportunity to write and create in other areas. And so I've just been able to be fortunate enough to have those kinds of opportunities.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present Sacrificing Justice.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to thank S. Renee Mitchell for appearing on the show. It's been a really fun.
Yes.
So, and now when we come back from the break, we're going to have